Chloe's whisper to the German shepherd shattered the trial forever. He's the one who hurts people. A pen clattered onto a legal pad, the sound shockingly loud in the frozen silence of the courtroom. A gasp tore through the air. The defense attorney shot up. Objection! All eyes were locked on the small witness chair, where a 3-year-old girl named Chloe had just buried her face in the fur of a giant German shepherd. The judge leaned forward. The prosecutor's hand hovered above her notes. Then Chloe pulled back, her wide, serious eyes finding the man accused of hurting her mother across the room. She didn't point. She didn't cry. But her voice, clear and certain, had changed everything. But how did a toddler's whisper become the only key to an unwinnable case? No one had expected this. Case number 7342 was supposed to be a dead end, a tragic domestic assault with a victim too injured to remember, and a crime scene that told a story without a narrator. The only other person present was a toddler who had not spoken a single word in the 6 weeks since the night her mother, Elena Vasquez, was found in their apartment, broken, bleeding, and silent. At Bonds Unspoken, we believe every heartwarming story, whether between humans or their animal companion, deserves to be told and heard. If you agree, please like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you can join us every time another bond speaks louder than words. The courtroom in the county courthouse was packed. Reporters filled the back rows. Jurors shifted, a mix of doubt and painful sympathy on their faces. Presiding was Judge Eris Thorne, a man known for a stern look but a soft spot for the vulnerable. He had fought over allowing Chloe to take the stand. What truth could a traumatized child possibly offer? Now he watched, his face unreadable, as the little girl clung to a police dog named Ranger. Ranger was a recent addition to the county's K-9 unit, cross-trained for therapy work with traumatized victims. His job today was simple: provide a calm, non-judgmental presence for a child witness. He sat perfectly still on a special mat before the witness chair, his intelligent brown eyes watchful, his therapy vest a quiet statement of purpose. He was not there to sniff for evidence, but to absorb fear. Chloe had entered the room clinging to her foster mother's leg, a faded stuffed elephant in her fist. She wore a yellow dress with tiny white daisies, one sock slightly higher than the other. Her steps were hesitant until she saw Ranger. A flicker of something, safety, passed over her face. She let go and walked straight to him, sinking into his side. The tension in the room softened by a single degree. Prosecutor Maya Vance's knuckles whitened around the edges of her legal folder. A woman in her late 30s with a reputation for meticulous, evidence-driven cases. She had argued passionately for Chloe's testimony. The physical evidence was thin. The boyfriend, David Riker, had an alibi just plausible enough. The mother's memory was fragmented by trauma. Chloe was the key, a lockbox. Maya's hope was that Ranger might be the gentle hand that held it, not that he would help pry it open so dramatically. After the shock of Chloe's statement rippled through the gallery, Judge Thorne sustained the defense's objection. The jury will disregard the outburst, he stated firmly, but his eyes lingered on Chloe. Everyone knew they could not disregard it. The raw certainty in that small voice had bypassed legal procedure and struck directly at human instinct. Maya approached the witness stand slowly, kneeling to bring herself to Chloe's eye level. Chloe's small hand was buried in the thick fur of Ranger's neck. "Chloe," Maya began, her voice soft but clear in the hushed room, "do you know why you're here today?" Chloe didn't look at her. Instead, she leaned over and whispered again into Ranger's ear, her lips moving against his black fur. The courtroom strained to hear, hearing only a faint murmur. After a moment, Chloe sat back. "He knows," she said simply, patting Ranger's head. "He sees it." A juror in the front row, a middle-aged teacher, brought a hand to her mouth. Maya exchanged a glance with Judge Thorne, who gave a subtle, almost imperceptible nod. "Chloe," Maya continued, following this unexpected thread, "can you tell us, what does Ranger see?" Chloe's brow furrowed, her gaze turning inward. She looked down at her scuffed red shoes, then back at the dog. "There was a bang," she said, her voice barely above a whisper yet amplified by the silence. "A really loud bang. And Mommy yelled, Note, she paused, her fingers twisting in Ranger's collar. Ranger wasn't there then, but he knows now. Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the courtroom's air conditioning. This wasn't coached. This was a child processing memory through a new, safe lens. How does he know, sweetheart? Because I told him, Chloe stated, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. I tell him the true things. From a defense table, David Riker's attorney, a sleek, silver-haired man named Robert Gable, let out a derisive sigh, loud enough to convey his contempt without earning a rebuke. He scribbled a note, the scratches pen-aggressive. Maya decided to pivot. She reached into a folder and pulled out a simple coloring book and a box of crayons. Chloe, would you like to draw something for Ranger? Maybe something about that loud night. Chloe hesitated, then nodded. She selected a black crayon and a red one. For a minute, there was only the sound of wax on paper. She drew a large square, a room, then a line through the middle of it, a table. Under the table, she drew a tiny circle with 2 dots for eyes. Outside the room, she scribbled angry, jagged red lines. Can you tell me about your picture? Maya asked. Chloe pointed to the small circle. That's me, hiding. Her finger moved to the red scribbles. Her whisper was barely a breath, her small hand trembling as she scratched the red crayon back and forth, harder and harder. That's the angry. The table broke. Maya's breath caught. The police report explicitly noted a kitchen table snapped at the base, a detail never released to the public. She gently took the drawing. Your Honor, the state would like to submit this as Exhibit A. Gable was on his feet. Your Honor, this is preposterous. A child scribble? This isn't evidence. It's a parlor trick. Judge Thorne examined the drawing, his expression inscrutable. He looked from the simple, frightening image to Chloe, who had now wrapped both arms around Ranger's neck, hiding her face. The dog had shifted his weight, leaning more firmly against her small body. The objection is overruled, Thorne said quietly. The drawing is admitted. The jury will accord whatever weight they deem appropriate. The message was clear. They could ignore if they found it frivolous, but they had seen the girl create it. As the first segment of questioning ended and the judge called for a mid-morning recess, the murmur that filled the room was electric. The case was no longer just about David Riker. It was about the little girl in the yellow dress and the silent, watchful dog beside her. They had become a single unit, a conduit for a truth that the adult world, with all its rules and procedures, had failed to access. She had a key. But could she build a case on the bond between the silent girl and the dog who taught her to speak? Maya Vance pressed the cold marble of the hallway wall against her palms, trying to steady the electric tremor in her hands. In the bustling hallway outside Courtroom 4, the air hummed with suppressed excitement and sharp professional tension. Reporter whispers collided with the clack of dress shoes on marble. She stood apart, the child's drawing, now officially Exhibit A, burning a hole in her folder. Her mind replayed Chloe's voice. He knows because I told him. I tell him the true things. It wasn't just testimony, it was a shift. The entire case now rested on validating a communication channel the law had no name for, the trust between a silent child and a dog. Her thoughts were interrupted by a calm, measured voice. She's connecting memory to safety. It's more significant than I anticipated. Maya turned to see Dr. Leo Chun, Chloe's soft-spoken trauma therapist, holding a disposable coffee cup. He had been observing from the back row. I didn't expect her to speak so directly in there, Maya admitted, keeping her voice low. The drawing, the details. Dr. Chun nodded. Chloe has been in a state of frozen fright for weeks. Ranger isn't just a comfort animal to her. He's become an external hard drive for her trauma. She's been putting her memories into him for safekeeping, like putting toys in a strongbox. What you're seeing is a decompression, a very careful, very brave unpacking. But will the jury see it as memory or manipulation? Maya asked. The core of her anxiety laid bare. Gable will paint this as suggestive therapy, me putting words in her mouth through a dog. Then you need to show it started long before today, Dr. Chin said. He reached into his leather satchel and retrieved a small, unmarked digital voice recorder. Our sessions are confidential. but with written consent from her foster guardian and given the circumstances. I recorded a portion of a session last Thursday. I thought it was just her whispering nonsense. After today, I think you should hear it. Maya's pulse quickened. She took the recorder, plugged in her earbuds, and hit play. The first sound was the staticky rustle of fur against the microphone. Then, Chloe's voice, small and muffled as if her mouth was pressed against fur. "Ranger, you gotta be super quiet. The bang man might come back." A pause filled with the dog's quiet sigh. Mommy shouted, "Stop." The glass fell. It was so loud. I was in the cupboard. You weren't there yet, but you're here now. The recording ended. Maya stared at the device. No questions had been asked. No prompts given. It was a raw, unprompted monologue directed solely at the dog, the bang man, the falling glass, the cupboard hiding spot. It corroborated everything she'd just said in court and added new, verifiable details. "This is it," Maya breathed. "This is a foundation. He can't claim I coached her if she said this in her office a week ago." "Be prepared," Dr. Chin warned. "He'll attack its admissibility. Hearsay, undue influence. He'll try to discredit me. But the consistency is your armor. She's not repeating a story. She's revisiting a memory, and the conduit is consistently the dog." The bailiff's call echoed down the hall. Court is now back in session. As Maya re-entered the courtroom, the energy had changed. The initial shock had solidified into a focused, almost palpable anticipation. Chloe was already back in the witness chair, one hand resting on Ranger's broad head. The dog's calm seemed to radiate outward, creating a small island of stillness in the procedural sea. Judge Thorne called the room to order. Robert Gable immediately stood, adjusting his cufflinks, a slow, deliberate smirk playing on his lips as he stood. "Your Honor, before we continue, the defense renews its motion to strike the child's prior statement and the so-called drawing from the record. This has veered into the realm of emotional spectacle, not evidence." Maya was ready. "Your Honor, the state is prepared to demonstrate the precise opposite. The witness's communication is consistent, unprompted, and directly corroborates physical evidence. We ask the court's permission to play an audio recording that establishes this consistency prior to today's testimony." Gable's eyes narrowed. "Recording? What recording? This is a blatant ambush, Your Honor." "The prosecution provided notice of possible supplemental evidence this morning, Your Honor," Maya stated calmly, handing a copy of the email log to the bailiff. The content only became materially relevant following the witness's initial statements. Judge Thorne put on his reading glasses, reviewed the log and sighed. "I'll allow it, Mr. Gable. You'll have full opportunity for cross-examination. Proceed, Ms. Vance." A small speaker was set up. As Maya prepared to play the clip, she looked at Chloe. "Sweetheart, this is from your time with Dr. Chun and Ranger. Is it okay if we listen?" Chloe, focused on braiding a loose thread from Ranger's vest, simply nodded. The audio filled the room. Every listener leaned in slightly. Heard in the formal silence of the court, Chloe's whispered confession to the dog was devastatingly intimate. The fear was tactile. The mention of the cupboard made Maya's detective, seated in the gallery, straighten up. The initial police report noted the kitchen pantry door was found ajar. When it ended, the silence was profound. A juror in the front row, a mechanic, looked down at his own worn hands, then slowly closed them into fists. Gable broke the silence, his voice sharp. "Your Honor, I object. This is classic hearsay. It's a therapy session, not a sworn deposition. The child could have been led, fed lines, influenced by the dog's presence, which is, I remind the court, a trained prop." Maya didn't flinch. "The witness is 3. The rules of evidence must accommodate the only way she can communicate. This isn't hearsay. It's a contemporaneous record of trauma. She identified the perpetrator to the dog before she knew what a courtroom was. The defense is welcome to call its own expert to contest Dr. Chen's methods, but they cannot contest the consistency." She turned to the jury. 2 different settings. 1 trusted listener. The same memory. Judge Thorne ruled. The recording is admitted for the limited purpose of demonstrating the witness's state of mind, and the consistency of her recollections. Jury, you will weigh it accordingly. It was a critical, hard-won victory. Gable sat down, a new tension in his jaw. Maya returned to Chloe. Chloe, in the recording, you said you were in the cupboard. Can you show Ranger where that was? For the first time, Chloe slid off the chair and knelt beside Ranger, as if giving him instructions. She pointed under the defense table. There, she murmured. But the dark one, with the cans. The crime scene photos flashed in Maya's mind, a walk-in pantry. She signaled her associate, who pulled a specific photograph, an overview of the kitchen. Maya showed it to Chloe. Is this the room? Chloe's eyes widened slightly. She nodded, then pointed a tiny finger at the pantry door in the photo. She looked up at Ranger and whispered, See? I told you. The mechanic in the jury box dragged his thumb roughly under one eye, leaving a faint, dirty smear on his cheek. The cold facts of the case, the broken table, the pantry door, were now fused with the child's lived experience. The evidence was no longer just physical. It was emotional, and it was being validated in real time by the only person who was there. Gable's cross-examination was a study in controlled aggression. He approached not Chloe, but Ranger, forcing Maya to object to him intimidating the child by crowding her safe space. He then focused on abstraction. Chloe, he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ranger is a good doggy, right? Chloe stared, clutching Ranger's vest. Do you like telling him stories? A small nod. And sometimes the stories we tell our doggies are just pretend stories, right? Like fairy tales. Chloe's brow furrowed. She looked at Ranger, then back at Gable. Her voice, when it came, was clear. I don't tell pretend. I tell true. Only true for Ranger. Gable pressed. But how can Ranger know what's true? He's just a dog. For a fleeting second, Chloe's lower lip trembled. Then Ranger shifted, pressing his head firmly against her knee. She took a breath, her small shoulders squaring. He knows, she said, with a finality that silenced the room. He knows because I was there. It was the end of the day's testimony. As the judge adjourned court, Maya felt a surge of exhausted triumph. They had navigated the minefield. They had gotten the recording admitted. Chloe had held firm. Maya watched the jury file out. Science. She needed to prove the bond with science. Or Gable's question, how can a dog know, would be the last one they remembered. The morning of the third day dawned with a thin, persistent rain that blurred the courthouse windows. Inside, the atmosphere had hardened. The initial novelty was gone, replaced by a grim focus. Robert Gable sat at the defense table, surrounded by a fresh stack of legal briefs, his earlier smirk replaced by a sharp, analytical coldness. He was preparing to dissect the prosecution's dog and pony show with surgical precision. Prosecutor Maya Vance, however, was armed with a new kind of ammunition. It wasn't just from Dr. Chun. It had arrived in her inbox at 2 a.m., a product of a sleepless night and a desperate hunch. She now held a manila envelope containing a single DVD and a forensic audio analyst's preliminary report. Her associate had connected a laptop to the courtroom's display screen. Your Honor, Maya began as court was called to order. The state would like to submit new evidence. It is a digital audio file, enhanced from a neighbor's security camera footage, time-stamped the night of the assault. Gable was on his feet instantly. Your Honor, this is outrageous. Further ambush. The prosecution is drip-feeding so-called evidence in a transparent attempt to manipulate the jury's emotions. Judge Thorne peered over his glasses. Ms. Vance, the basis for this late submission? The content of the file only became relevant after the witness's testimony yesterday, Your Honor, Maya explained, her voice steady. It provides independent, mechanical corroboration of a specific phrase the witness has used repeatedly. We notified defense counsel the moment the link was established. After a tense review of the timestamps on the notice, the judge allowed it. Proceed, but tread carefully, counselor. The courtroom screens flickered to life, casting a pale, grainy light across the jurors' faces. On the screen, a frozen, grainy image appeared, the corner of a brick building, a sliver of a window illuminated from within. The timestamp read 10:14 p.m. Maya clicked play. For a few seconds, there was only the hiss of enhanced audio static and the patter of that night's rain. Then a muffled, male voice shouting indistinctly. A woman's cry, sharp and cut off. A tremendous, sickening crash. The sound of splintering wood. The jurors flinched. A new sound emerged from the static. Not a bang, but a tiny, high-pitched whisper threaded through the rain. "Hide, Ranger, hide." Maya paused the playback. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. She let it stretch for 3 full seconds before speaking. The voice analysis confirms the speaker is a young child. The phrase is unique. "Hide, Ranger." Not "hide, Mommy." Not "hide, me." "Hide, Ranger." A dog who, according to all records, was not present that night. She turned to the jury. Chloe Vass has used that exact phrase. To her therapy dog in recorded sessions. In this courtroom, she processed the most terrifying moment of her life through the lens of a friend who would later make her feel safe. The neighbor's camera didn't see the crime, but it heard the child's mind already creating her protector. This isn't hearsay. This is an echo from the night itself, independent of any therapy, any questioning, any adult influence. Gable launched his counterattack during cross-examination of the audio expert, trying to poke holes in the enhancement process, suggesting the phrase could be "hide, angel," or "random noise." But the seed was planted. The coincidence was too precise, too chilling. Heads in the jury box, which had been tilted in doubt, were now leaning forward, eyes fixed on the screen. Maya pushed forward. She called to the stand Officer Ben Harris, one of the first responders. He was a large man whose uniform seemed to strain against his shoulders, but his voice was quiet as he described the scene. The mother was unconscious near the kitchen entrance. There was a lot of broken glass, a chair on its side, the kitchen table. It was snapped clean in two, one half leaning against the wall. He paused, his jaw tight. "We located the child approximately 7 minutes after entry. She was in a hallway closet, wrapped in a blanket behind some winter coats. She was conscious but unresponsive. She was holding a stuffed elephant. She made no sound." "Did you attempt to question her?" Maya asked, briefly. "Standard procedure. We asked if she was hurt, if she saw what happened. She just stared. Through us. No words. We assumed she was in severe shock, which the EMTs later confirmed." "And at that time, was there any doubt she was a sole witness?" "No, ma'am. The mother was incapacitated. The child was the only other person in the apartment." Maya nodded, turned to face the jury box. "So on that night, Chloe Vass was found hiding, silent, clutching a toy for comfort. She has since described, through Ranger, hiding in a dark space. She has drawn herself hiding under a table. She has recalled telling an imaginary Ranger to hide. Her testimony is not a story constructed after the fact. It is a sound and image of that traumatic silence, finally finding expression." Gable's cross-examination was blunt. "Officer Harris, did you hear the child utter the words, 'hide, Ranger,' that night?" "No, sir." "Did you see a dog named Ranger in that apartment?" "No, sir." "So, your testimony confirms the child was silent and a dog was absent. Everything else is just interpretation, correct?" Harris met Gable's gaze. "My testimony confirms the scene she has described through her drawings, and words matches the scene I witnessed. The broken table, the hiding place. That's not interpretation, sir. That's correlation." It was a solid, unshakable point. As Harris stepped down, Maya felt a cautious confidence. They had physical evidence, audio evidence, and consistent emotional testimony, all weaving together. But Gable wasn't finished. He called his own expert, a brisk, authoritative child psychologist named Dr. Amanda Finch, who testified that children Chloe's age have fluid memories, are highly suggestible, and can easily confuse reality with comforting fantasies, especially when a beloved animal is involved. "Could child in distress," Gable asked, "attach a traumatic event to a safe object like a dog after the fact, as a way to cope?" "Absolutely," Dr. Finch stated. It's a common psychological coping mechanism called displacement. The dog becomes a receptacle for fears she can't otherwise process. What you're seeing may be a true feeling, but not a factual memory. It was a compelling, science-backed counter-narrative. For the first time, Maya saw doubt flicker back into a few jurors' eyes. If Ranger was just a receptacle for fear, then how did he help retrieve a detail no one knew? The shiny ring? The battle was now a duel between experts, between two explanations for the same phenomenon. Was Ranger the key to truth, or merely a comforting canvas onto which a confused child had painted her fear? The day ended in a stalemate. As the courtroom emptied, Maya watched Chloe. The girl was coloring again, this time a picture of a big, smiling sun over a house. Ranger lay beside her, his chin on his paws, watching the door. The contrast was heartbreaking. In this room, adults dissected the mechanics of her trauma, while she, beside her silent guardian, simply sought to draw a peaceful world. Walking to her car in the damp evening, Maya replayed Dr. Finch's testimony. Displacement, a receptacle for fear. The defense's theory was plausible. It was rational. To defeat it, she couldn't just rely on emotion or consistency. She had to prove that the connection between Chloe and Ranger was not a passive coping mechanism, but an active, dynamic channel for recall. Tomorrow, she wouldn't just present evidence. She would put the bond itself on the witness stand. Robert Gable's polished composure finally cracked. It happened not during a heated objection, but in a moment of perfect silence. The morning's testimony had been a brutal grind of technicalities, with Gable systematically attacking the audio evidence as digital sorcery. But now, Prosecutor Maya Vance was holding up a large, sealed plastic evidence bag. Inside was a child's faded blue blanket, covered in cartoon rockets. "Your Honor," Maya said, her voice cutting to the legal wrangling, "the state submits Exhibit G." This blanket was recovered from the hallway closet, where Chloe Vass was found. It has never been shown to the witness. She turned to face the jury, letting the significance hang in the air. "We would like to conduct a demonstration." The request sent a ripple of confusion through the courtroom. Judge Thorne frowned. "A demonstration, Ms. Vance? Of what?" "Of memory, Your Honor. Not recalled through words, but through instinct." Maya's gaze moved to Chloe, who was leaning against Ranger, idly tracing the patches on his vest. "With the court's permission, we would like to see if the witness recognizes this object." Gable surged to his feet. "This is a transparently manipulative stunt. The child has been in that apartment since the event. She's seen her own blanket." "She has not," Maya stated calmly, handing a signed evidence log to the bailiff. "This was collected as potential trace evidence on night 1. It has been in sealed police custody. Her foster parents confirmed they purchased new bedding. She has not seen this specific blanket in over 6 weeks. After a tense conference, the judge allowed it, warning Maya to tread carefully. The bailiff carried the sealed bag and placed it on an empty table near the jury box. Maya walked over to Chloe and knelt. "Chloe, sweetie," she said softly, "do you see that blanket on the table over there?" Chloe glanced over, her expression blank. She shrugged. "Would you like to go see it with Ranger?" At the dog's name, Chloe's attention sharpened. She slid off the chair, her hand finding Ranger's fur, and let him lead her to the table. The courtroom watched, breath held. Chloe stared at the plastic-encased blanket. She showed no recognition, no emotion. Gable began to look smug. Then Maya spoke again, her voice a gentle prompt. "Ranger seems curious about it. Can you tell him what it is?" Chloe looked from the blanket to Ranger's face. She leaned close to his ear, her whisper picked up by the overhead microphones. "It's the hiding blanket," she murmured. Her small hand rose and pressed against the plastic, right over a stain shaped like a melted ice pop. The bang was there. "And I got this dirty." She pulled her hand back as it burned and buried her face in Ranger's neck, her shoulders tightening. It was a seismic shift. She hadn't just identified it. She recalled a sensory detail, the stain, and connected it to the trauma. The blanket wasn't just an object. It was a map back to the moment. Maya pressed on, her heart hammering. "Can you show Ranger how you use the blanket?" For a long moment, Chloe didn't move. Then, with Ranger nudging her gently, she walked back to the witness stand area. She didn't get in the chair. Instead, she slid to the floor between the chair and the wall, pulling her knees to her chest. She mimed pulling an invisible blanket over her head. She curled into a tight ball, becoming impossibly small. The only sound was the soft shush of her dress against the floor and Ranger's steady, panting breath. Ranger immediately lay down in front of her, his body forming a wall between her and the rest of the room, his head resting on his paws, watching her face. The reenactment was wordless, instinctive, and devastating. The child in the chair, the protective dog, standing guard. It was a perfect, silent echo of her drawing and her words. The courtroom understood, viscerally, what hiding meant to her. A single, sharp tap of Gable's pen against the legal pad snapped the silence. He didn't write. He just tapped, once, twice, his knuckle white. His cross-examination was furious, but scattered. He tried to argue that children often have favorite blankets, that the stain could be from anything. But his logic couldn't erase the image burned into the jury's mind. The tiny girl replicating her terror in the safety of the present, with her guardian between her and the world. Emboldened, Maya called her final witness for the day, Dr. Anya Sharma, a neurologist specializing in trauma memory. Dr. Sharma explained in clear, accessible terms how extreme fear imprints memories in the amygdala, often bypassing the verbal centers of the brain. The memory is stored as sensory data, sounds, smells, physical sensations, and visceral feelings. Words may be inaccessible, but the body remembers. A familiar object, like a blanket that was present, can trigger somatic recall, a physical reliving that is often far more accurate than a verbal narrative. And the role of the therapy dog in this process? Maya asked. The dog provides a bedrock of physiological safety, Dr. Sharma explained. It lowers heart rate, regulates breathing from that safe baseline. The traumatic memory can be approached and expressed without re-traumatization. The dog isn't a receptacle for fantasy. He's an anchor. He holds her safe in the present so her body can remember the past without drowning in it. He enables the translation of nonverbal, somatic memory into something that can be communicated through action, drawing, or eventual words. What you witnessed with the blanket wasn't suggestion. It was somatic recall facilitated by a secure attachment. Gable's cross-examination could not shake her. The science was solid, and it reframed everything. Ranger was not a passive stuffed animal. He was an active agent in recovery, a translator for a language written in fear and silence. As the day neared its end, a strange quiet settled. The legal arguments felt secondary. The jury had seen proof of concept. The bond worked. It could retrieve truth. The focus now turned, inevitably, to the content of that truth. Who was the bang man? Maya knew the following day would be the most dangerous. She would have to put Chloe back on the stand to confront the heart of the memory, the identity of the attacker. She had avoided direct questioning so far, letting the evidence circle the truth. Now, she had to ask the question point blank, with no dog, no blanket, and no drawing to hide behind. She had to ask a 3-year-old to name the monster in the dark. That evening, in a quiet playroom at the courthouse, Maya sat with Chloe, Dr. Chun, and Ranger. They didn't practice questions. They just played. Chloe built a block tower, and Ranger, with a gentle nudge of his nose, would topple it, making her giggle. Watching them, Maya had a chilling thought. Chloe's trust was absolute, but it was fragile. The next day's questioning could shatter it. Or it could finally shatter the case wide open. Just as Maya was leaving, Dr. Chin stopped her in the hallway. "There's something else," he said, his face grave. "In our session this afternoon, after the blanket, she said something new to Ranger." He handed Maya his notepad. Chen's notepad page was cold from the hallway. The words, scrawled in haste, seemed to bleed into the paper. He had the shiny ring that hurt my ear. Maya stared at the words, a cold certainty settling in her stomach. It was a detail no police report contained, a detail only the victim or the perpetrator could know. The ring was the key, but would the jury believe it came from a memory or from a story told to a dog? The courtroom door swung open, but it wasn't a bailiff or a lawyer who entered first. It was Ranger. He crossed the threshold first, his leash hanging loose. He led, and Chloe followed, her small shadow merging with his large one on the polished floor. She walked beside him like a partner. Her steps were small but steady. She wore a simple green dress and carried no stuffed animal. She didn't need to. The living, breathing guardian at her side was all the safety she required. They walked to the witness stand together, and as Chloe climbed into the chair, Ranger assumed his now familiar position, sitting squarely beside her, his shoulder pressing against the wooden frame. The message was silent but clear. We are ready. The air was charged with a final, fragile tension. This was the day. Prosecutor Maya Vance felt the weight of it in her quiet breaths. The defense's narrative of fantasy and suggestion had been wounded by science and demonstration, but it wasn't dead. To kill it, she needed the one thing she had deliberately avoided: direct identification. Your Honor, Maya began. The state recalls Chloe Vass for brief, follow-up questioning. Robert Gable offered no objection. He simply watched, his expression a mask of cold readiness. He was waiting for a mistake, for the child to falter. Maya approached slowly. She did not kneel. Today was different. Today required a subtle elevation, an acknowledgement of Chloe's own growing strength. Chloe, Maya said, her voice respectful, you've been very brave, telling Ranger and us about the loud night. Chloe looked at her, then at Ranger, and gave a single, small nod. We've talked about the bang, the hiding, the blanket. Now, I need to ask you about the person, the one who made the loud sounds. Maya paused, letting the silence gather. Can you tell Ranger about that person? Chloe's fingers curled into Ranger's fur. She leaned close to his ear. The courtroom leaned in with her. The whisper, when it came, was captured by the microphone. He had a loud voice and a shiny ring. Maya's blood went cold. The shiny ring that hurt my ear. Dr. Chen's note. It was real. Can you describe the ring to Ranger? Maya prompted, her own voice barely above a whisper. Chloe closed her eyes, her face tightening. It was silver, big. It had a bumpy line. It scratched when he... She stopped, her breath hitching. Ranger let out a soft, low whine and licked her hand once. She took a shaky breath. When he put his hand on Mommy's mouth, a jolt went through the gallery. The mother's medical report noted faint, linear abrasions on her cheek, consistent with being gagged by a hand wearing a ring with a prominent setting, a detail never made public. Chloe, Maya said, her heart pounding. This is very important. Does the person with that ring, is he in this room today? Every eye swept the courtroom, the jury, the gallery, the defense table. Robert Gable sat perfectly still, his hands folded on the table. He wore a wedding band, a simple gold band. Chloe's gaze began to travel. It moved over the jurors, the reporters, the bailiffs. It was slow, methodical. It passed over Gable without pause. Then it stopped. It landed on a man sitting 2 rows behind the defense table, near the aisle. He was an unremarkable man in a navy jacket, a court observer who had been present every day. He was the boyfriend's cousin, here for moral support. The hum of the air conditioner seemed to grow louder. The man in the navy jacket uncrossed his legs, the rustle of his trousers like a gasp in the quiet. Chloe did not point. She did not speak. She simply stared at him, her body going rigid. Then she turned and buried her face completely in Ranger's neck, her small shoulders trembling. It was enough. Your Honor, Maya said, her voice ringing in the stunned silence. The witness has identified an individual in the gallery. Chaos erupted. The man in the navy jacket stood up, his face pale. This is insane. She didn't say anything. Gable was on his feet, shouting about mistrial. Judge Thorne slammed his gavel, calling for order in the tumult. Ranger shifted, turning his body to more fully shield Chloe from the commotion, his gaze fixed on a now standing man. The next day, David Riker's seat at the defense table was empty. In his place sat his cousin, staring at the hands now cuffed in his lap. The final day in court was no longer a trial for David Riker. It was a sentencing hearing for a new defendant, and procedural dismissal for the original accused. The atmosphere was not celebratory, but somber, heavy with the cost of truth. Chloe did not attend. Her part was over. But Ranger was there, sitting with Detective Harris at the back of the room, a living symbol of the bridge that had carried justice across a chasm of silence. Weeks later, on a bright, crisp morning, a small, private ceremony was held in Judge Thorne's chambers. Chloe, holding her mother Elena's hand, stood before the judge. Elena, though still healing, stood tall, her eyes clear. Chloe, Judge Thorne said, his stern voice unusually gentle, "The court owes you a great debt. You demonstrated more courage than most adults ever muster. For your bravery, and for helping us listen, I'm presenting you with this." He handed her a framed certificate, naming her an honorary guardian of truth. Chloe took it, shy, then looked down at Ranger, who sat proudly in his full-dress vest. "Ranger helped," she stated simply. Detective Harris then stepped forward. He gave a soft whistle. Ranger trotted up, carrying a new stuffed animal, a plush German shepherd. He dropped it gently at Chloe's feet. "This," Harris said, kneeling, "is so you'll always have a Ranger with you. The real one has to go back to work, helping other people, but he'll never forget you." Chloe hugged the toy, then, impulsively, wrapped her arms around the real Ranger's neck. "Thank you for being my voice," she whispered. In the months that followed, life softened into a new normal. Elena and Chloe moved to a sunlit apartment with a small balcony. The stuffed Ranger sat on a shelf, watching over the room. The real Ranger returned to duty, but his legend had grown. He became a poster dog for the expanded K-9 therapy program, which saw a surge in funding and requests. Maya Vance kept a copy of Chloe's first drawing, the stick figure on the broken table, framed in her office. It reminded her that truth doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's a whisper passed from a wounded heart to a listening soul, carried on the quiet, faithful breath of a friend. The case had changed the law, inspiring new protocols for child witnesses. But more than that, it had changed the people in that courtroom. It reminded them that before evidence, before arguments, there is simply a story waiting to be heard. And sometimes, all it needs is the right listener. On a spring afternoon, Maya saw them in the park. Elena was on a bench, reading. Chloe was running through the grass, laughing, and loping beside her, a gentle giant keeping pace, was Ranger, there for a special visit. His tail beat a joyful rhythm against the grass, thump, 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 in time with her laughter. He wasn't working. He was just playing. Chloe tripped and fell onto the soft grass, and Ranger was there in an instant, sniffing her, nudging her until her giggles returned. Maya watched, a quiet smile on her face. The little girl who had spoken 4 world-shaking words was now just a child laughing in the sun. The dog who had been a bridge was now just a friend. The memory of the loud night was not gone, but it was no longer a cage. The memory of the loud night was now just a story. And it ended not with a bang, but with the sound of the little girl's laughter and the quiet, faithful panting of her friend. If stories like this touch your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Bonds Unspoken. Every click helps us share more incredible moments that celebrate the bond between humans and animals. And be sure to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story that reminds us what true loyalty feels like.